I shouldn't have taken the job, but it was the only thing that paid over $100,000 for a 60-day contract. And with my student debt drowning me and my dad's hospital bills piling up, it felt like the only choice left. I'd done security work before, malls, warehouses, even a bank once, but this was different. The offer came from a subcontractor tied to the government. No company name on the paper, just a black eagle watermark and a set of coordinates in the northern Canadian Arctic. They told me the site was a former Cold War research facility, shut down in the early 90s, still filled with sensitive materials. "We just need a presence on site while we decommission it," the recruiter said. "It's just formality, nothing dangerous. You'll be completely alone, but the place is stable." Alone. That word stuck with me. They flew me in on a small twin-prop plane. No airport, no hangar. Just white wilderness and an old snow-beaten outpost with rusting satellite dishes and a communications tower long dead. The structure itself was buried halfway under permafrost, reinforced with concrete and steel. From the outside, it looked like a bunker. From the inside, it felt like a tomb. There were 3 levels: top floor, command room, living quarters, radio station, and a storage wing. Middle level, labs and offices. Basement, sealed. My instructions were clear: never open the basement level. They even welded the main hatch shut. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Computers with green monitors, old typewriters, coffee mugs still sitting next to stacks of faded files. I walked through the dim corridors for 2 hours with a flashlight, calling out occasionally just to hear the echo bounce back. No life, no power, just the wind howling outside and the endless groan of the ice pressing against the walls. The first night, I couldn't sleep. There were no windows, and the temperature in the bunk room stayed just above freezing, even with the heater they'd installed before I arrived. I kept hearing things, scraping, like metal dragging against concrete, far below. I convinced myself it was the building settling. Day 2, I found the logs. Buried in a locked filing cabinet were old mission reports. Pages stamped confidential and most names redacted. They were written in English, but some had margins filled with Russian. Some were typed, others handwritten and shaky. One report from 1983 mentioned something called Project Krestovka. Another described anomalous audio disturbances from lower sectors and how contact with Team C was lost after entry day 3. Then I read a line that made my stomach turn. "Do not engage with subjects if visual contact is made. Observation only." I stopped reading after that. I told myself I'd finish the contract and walk away richer. Just 60 days. No internet. No phone. Just static on the radio and pages of paranoid reports. But by the 5th night, things escalated. At 2:17 a.m., I heard a knock. A single, clear knock on the main entrance door. The one sealed by 3 steel bars and 10 inches of reinforced metal. I checked the monitor. Nothing on camera. No footprints in the snow the next morning either. But the knock repeated the next night. And the next. Same time. Same sound. It always came from the outside. I asked the satellite phone operator, my only contact, to check with the contractor. They brushed it off. Probably an echo from ice expansion. They said, "Keep logging it. You're doing great." Then, on night 7, the knock came from the inside. From the sealed basement hatch. I nearly vomited. The sound was gentler this time, like fingertips brushing along the steel. I stared at the welded edges, praying I'd imagined it. But the moment I turned away, something knocked again, 2 slow, deliberate taps. I locked myself in the command room for the rest of the night. At 4:11 a.m., I heard static from the old radio console, one that hadn't worked since I got there. A single voice whispered through, "Joel, don't let them out again." I hadn't told anyone my name. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink for hours. I just sat in the command room staring at that ancient radio, praying that it wouldn't speak again. But it did. At 5:06 a.m., I heard breathing. Not static, not distortion. Real, human breathing, like someone was standing on the other end, holding the mic, waiting for me to answer. I pulled the plug. I physically yanked the whole power line out of the wall, even though I knew the system wasn't functional in the first place. None of the wires led anywhere anymore. That was the first moment I truly believed I might not leave that place alive. I started a new routine after that. I didn't leave the top floor. I stopped doing the walk throughs of the labs. I checked the motion sensors, write in the logbooks, microwave my rations, and sit with my back against the wall facing the door. I locked myself in every night with both padlocks they left me. I thought if I stayed away from the lower levels, maybe nothing would escalate. Maybe I could ride it out. But on the 9th day, the sensors on the middle level triggered. Just once. 2:31 a.m. Zone 3B, the lab hallway just above the sealed basement. I checked the feed, but the cameras were dark. Just a black square and a flicker of white light, like static had bled into the lens. I reset the system, and the feed came back. Nothing was there, but something had moved. Something had walked through that hall. The next morning, I went down with my flashlight and crowbar. I didn't want to, but I needed to know if there was someone else in the station. Maybe a previous worker who never left. Maybe I wasn't alone all this time. That possibility actually comforted me until I got to Zone 3B. There were footprints, bare feet, dozens of them. They trailed in random directions, overlapping each other, crisscrossing the hallway. Thin prints, elongated toes, almost human, but not quite. The skin had left smudges on the cold metal floor, like something would had walked through. They stopped right at the basement hatch. The weld was intact. I backed away slowly, keeping my light fixed on the prints. Then I noticed something even worse. My logbook was lying in the center of the floor, open. I had left it upstairs, on my desk. It had my name, my times, my notes on the knocking. I hadn't touched it since the day I started hearing the voice. Something had brought it down there. That was the first time I tried to quit. I radioed the satellite phone operator, let's call him Denton, and told him I was leaving. I'm done, I said. Send the plane. I don't care about the contract. He went quiet. Then he said, we'll get you out at the 30-day checkpoint. That's protocol. I don't care about protocol. You should. He said it in a tone I'd never heard before. Cold. Unfamiliar. Then he hung up. The line went dead and never came back. That night, the basement door began to breathe. There's no other way to describe it. The air around it would push outward, then pull back in. The dust would lift and fall with it. I placed my hand near the steel, and it felt alive. Warm. Like something was shifting behind the door, waiting. Then I heard it again. That same voice, this time clearer. Joel, open it. It's colder in here than it is out there. I backed away slowly, then ran. I didn't stop until I was in the equipment closet, stuffing anything I could into my duffel bag. I was planning to hike out. 40 miles south was the old military drop zone. It would take days, but I'd rather freeze to death out there than wait for that thing to come upstairs. But when I opened the front door to leave, everything outside was gone. I don't mean snow blindness. I don't mean fog. I mean gone. There was no landscape, no horizon, just an endless gray void. Like the world itself had vanished, and the lab was floating in some kind of nothingness. I stepped out 3 feet and turned around. There was no building behind me anymore. Just the same gray in every direction. I screamed. I ran forward until my lungs ached, then turned around again. The building was back. But now, there was something new. A trail of red footprints led from the void to the door. Not blood, not paint. The prints were glowing. I ran inside, slammed the door, locked all 5 bolts. The glowing prints stopped at the threshold, but the last one was half inside, like someone had almost stepped through, but changed their mind. Since then, the lab's power has flickered back on, even though the generators are still disconnected. The camera feeds show rooms that no longer exist. Sometimes, I see myself on them, sitting in rooms I've never entered, writing in logbooks I've never seen. I don't know how much longer I can stay sane. But last night, I saw something that made my blood freeze. I went back to the radio, not to use it, just to see if it would do anything. At 3:33 a.m., it turned on by itself. No static, just a voice. Not the whisper this time. A broadcast. Phase 2 has begun. Observation complete. Initiate external testing. I didn't recognize the voice, but it ended with, Joel will not resist. He belongs to us now. I didn't sleep that night either. There was no point. The voice on the radio had confirmed what I'd been afraid of since day one. I wasn't guarding the lab. I was the experiment. By morning, the motion sensors were triggering constantly. First Zone 2, then Zone 3, then, somehow, the top floor, though I hadn't heard a single footstep. No knocks, no creaks, just the red lights blinking in sequence, tracking something's ascent through the building, like it wanted me to know it was coming. But that wasn't the worst part. The outside changed again. Where there had once been endless gray, now there was a sky, but not Earth's sky. It was bruised purple. It pulsed slowly, like breathing lungs stretched across the atmosphere. And in the distance, across the white, I could see structures. Gigantic obsidian towers protruding from the ice. They hadn't been there before. I watched them for hours. They didn't move, but they didn't feel static either, like they were waiting for some kind of signal. I considered leaving again, but I knew deep down there was no outside anymore. Whatever the lab had uncovered, whatever they had unearthed in that sealed basement, it had overwritten reality. And then, the knocking started again. Only this time, it wasn't on the door. It was coming through the walls. I heard it behind the storage closet, then inside the vents, then underneath the floor, everywhere at once. Rhythmic, slow, methodical, like sonar, like something was scanning the structure from within, pressing against every corner, looking for cracks. Then I heard laughter. It wasn't human. It mimicked the sound of it, just like the voice had mimicked language before, like a predator trying to imitate a hunter's call. That's when I knew it wasn't trying to get out. It was waiting for me to come in. I snapped. I grabbed the last flare gun from the emergency locker and headed to the basement. I figured if I ended it, whatever it was, maybe I'd wake up back on Earth. Or maybe I'd die fast instead of rotting in this impossible dimension. I stood in front of the welded hatch, trembling. The metal was warm, breathing, pulsing. With one hard kick, I broke the weld clean. I wasn't surprised. I think it wanted to open. I think it needed to. The hatch creaked slowly, releasing a hot wave of air. And then, I saw it. The corridor wasn't man-made. It sloped downward in impossible geometry, with walls that shimmered like liquid obsidian and veins of red light running through them. The air smelled sweet, almost pleasant, like honey gone sour. And lining the walls were symbols, etched in deep with something sharp. They didn't look written. They looked grown. I walked forward. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop myself. The hallway twisted my senses. I'd walk 10 steps and end up back where I started. I'd close my eyes and open them to find the corridor had changed shape. I fired a flare just to mark my path. It hit the wall and vanished, absorbed like it had never existed. Then, from ahead in the dark, I saw a shape. At first, it looked like a man, tall, gaunt, with arms too long and a face blurred like it was underwater. But as it moved, its outline shifted like it couldn't decide what to be. Sometimes it was me. Sometimes it was Denton. Sometimes it was a thing I can't describe, just wrong. It didn't walk. It glided forward. And it spoke. "You opened the door, Joel. That was the final phase. You were always going to let us out." I lifted the flare gun, hands shaking. It laughed again, that distorted, imitation sound. "Where do you think you are?" I fired. The flare lit the tunnel for a split second, enough to show that the thing wasn't alone. Behind it, hundreds of them, all shifting, all breathing, all watching me with eyes that didn't glow. They absorbed light. I turned and ran. Somehow I made it back, slammed the hatch shut, welded it again with the emergency torch. And then everything went dark. No lights, no power, no motion sensors, no radio. But the knocking returned, softer now, like tapping, almost playful. I'm writing this with the last bits of battery on the laptop. There's no rescue plane coming. I know that now. The agency I worked for, whatever it really was, they never planned to extract me. I wasn't assigned to guard the lab. I was the key. The moment I opened that hatch, I fulfilled the only purpose I had left, to invite something back into our world. They're still behind the door for now, but I don't know how long that will last. If anyone finds this, don't try to save me. Don't come to Arctic Station Echo 7. And for the love of whatever you believe in, don't open the door.